All right, good morning, economics, and happy Monday. Okay, so here's where we're starting today. Last week I sent you the review and the key to the review, and I also sent you the test on money supply. So those should start coming back to me. When you get a chance, start returning those tests. And for those of you who haven't returned the first test we took, see how you can get that back to me. Again, a lot of kids are taking pictures of them with their phones and sending them to me via Remind. That's fine. You can scan it and send it by email. You can bring it up to school. School's open 8 to noon, and it should be almost every day. If not, I know for sure Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 8 to noon. And they'll stop you at the front and take what you need and get you what you got. All right, we're going to move on. And I was just saying to Mr. Finley earlier, I wish you guys were here because the economic climate right now is just, it's amazing, and I wish we were here to talk about it, but unfortunately we're not. And we still have notes to get through so that if you are taking the AP test, you will be ready. I hope y'all will consider it if you haven't already signed up. They're going to do a 45-minute session. It's probably going to be 3-4 free response questions. It's all free response. There's no multiple choice this time, which for this test is kind of weird because 2/3 of the grade comes from the multiple choice and 1/3 comes from free response. So it's going to be a whole new way of scoring this test. And again, my experience with this AP economics test is that you get half credit just for knowing the graphs themselves. So if you've got a good lock on your graphs, I mean, you're looking at probably a 3. And many of you know way more than that. So 3s, 4s, and 5s are not out of reach at all. And again, most of the colleges, if you score a 3, unless you're going to be an economics major, a 3 will place you out of your college requirement. So keep that in mind. And if you have questions, just send them through in mind. We're going to be talking about the money supply and the graph of the money supply and what you can do with disposable income and consumption and saving. And that's where we're going to start today. So here we go. Let's go. We're going to kind of step back and just recap everything. Let's say that our economy, that pin's out. Hang on one sec. And today's a lot of notes, so get your paper ready. Okay, let's say that our economy is in a recession. Remember, the Fed has some ways to combat that. And we're talking about the National Bank or the Federal Reserve Bank. On the test, they usually call the Fed. It's very rare that they will call, the test writers, will call the Federal Reserve Bank by name. They'll say the National Bank of whatever country they're dealing in. But if we are in a recession, that means we need money in the system. And I'm going to step back right there and say, if you've been paying attention to the news, and you probably have been because there's not a lot of other alternatives right now, but the stimulus package that was passed last week and then also the small business loans that are coming out, the current administration just made loans available almost immediately to small businesses. And what they're trying to do is keep money in our system, keep the wheels turning, because so many people are losing their jobs. And it starts kind of at the ground level, like the waiters, the waitresses, the bellhops, the sky caps. The basic travel industry is almost gone, and the entertainment industry is almost gone. So those people need some money to get through the next month. Hopefully it's only another month, but we'll see. So that's what these stimulus packages are designed for. Of course, other things were put into the stimulus package bill that have nothing to do with the recovery, and that's where you, as a potential voter, really need to get involved and start thinking about what your Congress is doing. Then, on top of that, the current administration said small business loans will now be available almost immediately, and what they're doing, let's say, for instance, you own, I don't know, an ice cream store, downtown Fred, and you suddenly have no customers coming in. Well, you have to get through the next month or so that you don't go out of business. So what they're saying is these small businesses now have access to loans, which are almost interest-free and may even turn into grants, and I'll talk about that in just a second, to get payroll, to get rent, to get supplies paid for while there's no income coming in from the stores. So the government is working on this. Now, why do I do grants like this? Well, if you receive a sum of money from the government, again, the government doesn't make money. That is your money as a taxpayer. So this money all has to be repaid. So if the government, if this administration says, okay, we gave out, I don't know, pick a number, $1 trillion in small business loans, and we're going to just waive them all in the effort of the economy. Well, that $1 trillion still has to come back somehow. So more than likely what's going to happen is what? A tax increase. So it's going to come back sooner or later. We all may share the burden of that, or they may put that on the businesses. But it's not like there's just free money floating around and here you get some. So remember, anytime the government is giving money away, it's your money, and you need to pay attention to where that's going. So right now, they're trying to keep us out of a recession/depression, and they're putting money into the system so that all these small businesses don't shut down. Now, why is it the small businesses? Because most of the large businesses, and when I'm talking about large businesses, I'm talking about your Exxon Mobils, your BPs, your I wish you guys were here to interact with me. It would help a lot. But think of the largest company, your Walmarts. Companies like this have a lot of cash, generally stored up, retained earnings. They make money with what they're doing. So they can probably weather the storm. But the small businesses generally do not, because they're paycheck to paycheck. They're trying to establish their business. So the larger businesses aren't, although they can get these loans, they're probably not first in line. It's going to be the small businesses that are first in line. So we need money in the system so that things don't completely shut down. And remember, the Federal Open Market Committee, and I know I keep going back to this, but this is a big issue, a big topic with the AP testers. The Open Market Committee can either buy or sell bonds. And if they buy, remember, the letters are the same. Buy is to put, sell is to take. So this is their choice if they're trying to prevent us from being stuck in a recession. So they're going to be buying bonds. They're going to be putting money into the system. Well, let's think about this. We're going back to our loanable funds graph. Okay. And if they're buying, they are increasing the supply of loanable funds. So what happens is we have a larger quantity, our interest rates are going down. Another thing that's rather historic right now is that our interest rates are so low. I think it was the 3-month T-bill that went negative interest, which means you're now paying to own that thing. They're not paying you, you're paying them. This is a little bit of a problem for the Fed because generally interest rates are something they can work with. But right now interest rates are so low, they're having trouble with that. But that's one of the things they do. So that's our change to the loanable fund market, which means interest rates, in theory, will go down. Okay? Again, let's start thinking about the circular flow model and the expenditure model of GDP. Consumption, investment, government, exports minus imports. Well, if interest rates are going down, investment is going to go up. We've talked about this a lot, but if you're building that plant and that equipment, you want to borrow at the least rate that you can. So if interest rates are historically low, you're going to be borrowing. And that means investment, private investment will increase. Which means what? More jobs, more equipment, more stuff, more people getting hired, and here we go with the recovery in the economy. Okay? The Fed can also, let me bring that back up here. In addition to buying and selling bonds, they can lower, not the Fed funds rate, but what? The discount rate. The rate at which banks borrow from the Fed. That affects the Fed funds rate, and it's very confusing, but the Federal Reserve Bank sets the discount rate, not the Fed funds rate. They can lower the discount rate, and they can also lower reserve requirements. Okay? All right. If we are trying to fight inflation, now again, inflation means there's too much money in the system. The system is working harder than it should be. Excuse me a minute. Excuse me. And so what they want to do is take some money out of the system. Basically, the car is going too fast. We can't make the turn at 100 miles an hour. Let's slow it down to 50, make the turn, and then go from there. That's kind of the analogy that we use. So if we want to take money out, FOMC will now sell bonds. And again, with your loanable funds graph, they are going to be reducing the loanable funds. They're taking money out of the system, which of course shrinks the quantity and increases the interest rate. All right? Excuse me. So if interest rates are going up and you want to build that plant and equipment, you're going to wait and you're going to put that on hold, meaning less private investment. They could also raise the discount rate, and they can raise the reserve requirements. Okay? All right, that's what the federal bank can do, the Federal Reserve Bank in our country, or as you'll see it referred to on the test, the central bank, the government bank. That's how you'll see that referred to. All right, let's move on then to fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is run by your Congress and your administration, being the president. Okay. Now, what can Congress do? And let's put ourselves in recessionary situation. Okay, if we're in a recessionary situation, we need cash. We need money. We need money in our system. So Congress, one of the first things they can do is change the tax rate. Let's just say that you're making $100,000 a year, and the tax rate, sorry, I just got done with pre-cal and I'm writing tangent, and the tax rate is 50%. Now, I know that seems extreme, and it is, but it wasn't in the 70s. That means $50,000 of your income goes to the government, and $50,000 goes to you. All right. Oh, I'm frozen. My hands aren't up there. That may be the camera. I'm going to try and, usually if I turn off this camera, it'll fix it. So let me see if I can try that. Hang on, you guys. I think this problem lies in the document camera, not in your system. All right, let's see if this fixes what we needed to fix. Yep, back on. Is it moving? Yeah, okay, we're good. Yeah. Okay, so again, if you're at a 50% tax rate, then you're paying the government half your salary, which means what? You only have $50,000 to spend. So let's say that Congress says, okay, we're in a recession, and they cut our tax rate to 10%. That means out of your $100,000, now the government gets $10,000 of it, and you get $90,000. So basically, you have a pay increase of $40,000 from the last tax rate. Well, what are you going to do? Of course, you know what you're going to do. You're going to spend it. Yay, $40,000. Now we can put the pool in the backyard. Now we can buy the bigger house. Now we can send our kids to college. That's more money for you to spend. So cutting the tax rate has a big impact on our economy, and raising the tax rate does too. Okay, now, if they cut the tax rate, they probably will not quit spending money. So what happens is it creates a deficit. And now Congress is going to have to deal with the deficit. So what are they going to do? Well, more than likely, they're going to increase taxes. So you can see we get back into that cycle of business cycle, recession, going to the peak, falling back down, and it just starts repeating again and again and again. So none of this is really set in stone, if you will, and it depends what the government projects are and what they want to do. All right? So if we are in an expansionary period, then, or let me just write that as I wrote it above earlier, if we're in an inflationary period, that's what I'd really like to say. Okay, if we're in an inflationary period and Congress wants to put the brakes on it, they're going to do exactly the opposite of cut taxes. They're going to raise your taxes. All right. Now, another thing they can do, if we're in inflationary, and we'll go back to the recession in just a minute, but they can cut their spending. And what that means is we're not going to build the highway. We're not going to build the school. We're not going to build the post office. And when they cut that spending, it, of course, cuts into the job market and cuts the amount of money we have. Going back into the recession, if the taxes aren't as effective as they want them to be, what else can they do? They can increase the spending. And you're kind of seeing that right now. Again, if you're watching, I'm trying to remember the companies, but I know, Sherwin-Williams. They're going to switch their manufacturing processes from paints to hand sanitizer. Well, who's paying for that? Well, the government's paying for that. They are helping in this fight against the COVID, and the government's saying, okay, you're not selling paint right now. People aren't painting their houses. There aren't the jobs out there. So what we're going to do is we're going to pay you, and we're going to pay you to make the hand sanitizer. So government is trying to keep these people employed and also fight this virus that's out there. So win-win for the government. Again, that's your money they're spending, and is that good or is it bad? Well, it depends, but just know it's not the government's money. It is your money. All right, let's talk about the money supply itself. And it's going to go hand in glove with the quantity of loanable funds, of course. I would draw these side by side. And you're going to see the similarities. First of all, we have a quantity of money. And we have a quantity of loanable funds. What is the price of money? Well, of course, it's interest. The interest rate that you are charged is the price of money. Now, we have a demand for money. And of course, we have a demand for loanable funds. I'm staying on the loanable funds graph right now. We also have a supply of loanable funds. I'm sorry. Equilibrium quantity is what I meant, and equilibrium interest. Okay, so in the economic world, when the government puts money in or takes money out, that's our supply of loanable funds. When you get into the money supply, there is a finite amount of money. There is only so much money that the government has and that they put into circulation. So your money supply graph is going to look like this, and we have equilibrium quantity and equilibrium interest. So instead of being a curve, like the supply of loanable funds. It's a vertical line because there's a set amount of money. This should start reminding you of the long-run Phillips curve where there's a set amount of unemployment. Same thing. So when the government is changing the money supply, our curve, our vertical curve, is what is shifting. So that's really the only difference between these two graphs. Make sense? All right. Lock those in. All right, let's talk about disposable income, where you had a question on one of your other reviews or tests, and it talked about the speed of money, the velocity of money. Well, this is what disposable income is going to get into now. So disposable income is your income after you pay your taxes. Okay. I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but Texas is one of the few states that does not have an income tax. So what I'm getting at, let's just say you live in New York State. Then whatever you earn, you're going to pay income tax on that to the state of New York, and you're going to pay income tax on that to the government. Texas does not have that policy, and it's one of the few states that doesn't. But keep in mind, a lot of people pay income tax to their state, and they pay it to the federal government. Of course, you'll pay it to the federal government if you're in Texas. So let's just say, keep the numbers small. Let's say your gross income is $1,000, and the tax rate is 30%. So you are taking home $700 out of your paycheck once you paid your taxes. In the world of economics, you have two choices with this money. Here you go. You can, number one, spend the money, or number two, save the money. That's it. Those are your choices. You can spend it or you can save it. And when we say spend, we're really saying consume it. You can use the money or you can put it away. Now, it doesn't matter where you put it away. In other words, you don't have to save it at a bank to have it considered save. You can save it in your house. You can save it in the backyard. You can save it wherever you want to. You're not spending it is what that really means. So let's talk about household spending. Remember, household spending makes up 70% of our GDP. Think that through for a minute. Most household spending right now has been shut down. The stores are not open, the restaurants are not open, the travel industry is not open. So we're looking at almost 70% of our GDP, which is not being spent right now. That's why they've got these massive bailout packages. Household spending is constrained by what? Two things. The amount of disposable income, you take a second and write that down. And number two, the propensity, how about that for a big word, to save. Now, once a household makes a decision to spend or save, it isn't always locked in stone. Again, when y'all get out of school and you start up your own households, more than likely what you're going to be doing with your household income for at least probably the first decade is spending. You need a house, you need a car, you need furniture, you need baby clothes, whatever. You're starting your family. You're going to be spending a lot of money. But if you look at your grandparents, or sometimes your parents at this stage, but y'all are still young, your parents are still spending money on you, they don't spend as much. They're not buying furniture. They're not buying baby equipment and toys and food. What are they doing? They're saving their money. So as you move through life, your propensity to save and consume is going to change. It's not just determined one time and never revisited. Okay. If you are borrowing to consume, well, what does that mean? Let's say you're going to take out a student loan. You're borrowing so that you can consume an education, right? So you can pay for that education. Well, we call that dis-saving. Of course, you can always make that up, but just know you're going into the negative territory here. So we talk about average propensity to consume and to get fancy APC, and average propensity to save. Remember, you're doing two things with your money. You're either spending it, consuming it, or you are saving it. That's it. Those are your choices. So my propensity to consume added to my propensity to save has to equal 1. So let's say that in our household, our propensity to consume is 60% and our propensity to save is 40%. Again, it has to equal 1. And that means 60 cents of every dollar we're bringing home, we're consuming. 40 cents of every dollar we're bringing home, we are saving. And you're going to get asked more than likely a silly little question like this. Let's say you have a household that consumes 67% of its after-tax earnings. The question's going to be, what is that household's average propensity to save? Well, okay, 1 minus 0.67, their propensity to save is going to be 33%. Easy enough. So we're going to move on right now to the marginal propensity to consume. I got about 15 minutes left. We're filming right now. We're taping class. Okay, thanks. So marginal propensity to consume. And again, this is where we get into the velocity of money. So remember, when you put money in the bank could either lend it out or hold it in reserves. And we talked about the money multiplier there. Well, now you've got your spending multiplier. And it's the same thing. What you're going to do is how many times does my marginal propensity to save go into 100? Okay? So, if our marginal propensity to consume is 80% and our marginal propensity to save is 20, what is my spending multiplier? Well, how many times does 20 go into 100? 5. My spending multiplier is 5. Same type of format. If my marginal propensity to consume is 90%, I consume 90% of what I make. My marginal propensity to save is 10%. Remember, they have to add up to 1. 80 and 20 is 1. 90 and 10 is 1. My spending multiplier then would be 10 goes into 100 10 times. If my marginal propensity to consume is 75%, and my marginal propensity to save then would be 25%. My spending multiplier, 25 goes into 100 4 times. So I hope that makes sense. It's fairly easy. There's nothing really tricky about it. Okay, so let's talk about what households spend their money on. Again, we're talking about almost 70% of the GDP, so it's a lot. Some of the things that what are households buying? What makes the world go round for a household? Well, of course, food is the number one priority. Shelter, house payments. And when I say house payments, it doesn't necessarily mean the household owns a house. It could be rent. It could be mortgage payment, anything along those lines. What else do households buy? Well, of course, they buy clothes. one of the biggest purchases households make is on education. They pay for energy, right? You keep your house air conditioned, you keep it heated, you run your cars. Then what else? Well, then entertainment. Some families go on vacation, some families buy puzzles, some families buy Netflix, whatever. You spend money on entertainment. And I'm trying to think. That pretty much covers it. Food, shelter, clothing, education, energy, entertainment. Those are our biggest categories that households are spending their money on. So what drives that? What makes a household decide to spend money or not? Now, you may have noticed in the last few weeks your family isn't spending as much money as they normally do. Well, and there are a few reasons for that. One, there's nothing to buy. You just can't go to Dillard's right now or whatever department store you shop at. They're closed. The second thing is uncertainty. People aren't really sure what's happening right now, and they don't want to get rid of their cash. So when you saw the stock market crash, I guess that was probably 3 weeks ago when the bottom fell out. Number one, things were changing in the industry, so stocks were becoming devalued. But another thing there too was fear and uncertainty, and people that invest don't like uncertainty in the market. So what do? Instead of holding Exxon stock while the price of oil is crashing from $40 to $20 a barrel, I think what I'll do is put my money in cash. Once all that settles out, then I'll go back into the market. So one of the things that drove that huge downturn in the market was the flight to safety. People wanted their cash. They wanted to hold on to their cash, and some even transferred it into precious metals because precious metals can be spent around the world. You can spend gold anywhere. So flight to safety was another reason that the market crashed. Let's just put, and I know y'all are very young and you don't understand this, but let's just say you're not. Let's put yourself in let's say you're 63 years old and you have worked your entire lifetime and you have managed to save $1 million. Right? So, hang on a second, let me get my calculator. Let's say that's a lifetime of savings and investment for you. And let's say you were going to spend that on your retirement and you expected to retire at the age of 65 and maybe live for 25 years. So, without touching your principal, you would have given yourself retirement income of roughly $3,300 a month. Okay? Well, the market went from 30 to 20, or 33%. So now all of a sudden the market crashes. You were not aware this was coming. You didn't get out in time, and you've lost 33% of your value of your portfolio. So now your $1 million portfolio has been changed to $670,000. Again, you have worked your lifetime for that money, and within a few weeks, it's gone. You've lost, what, $330,000? So how is that going to affect your, hang on a minute, how many years did I say we were retiring? I just lost my train of thought. 25, okay. So how is that going to affect your retirement income? Now all of a sudden, instead of that $3,300 you were going to be spending on your retirement, now you've got $2,233 a month. So your lifestyle has just decreased roughly $1,100 a month for the rest of your life, which again is significant. So what people were seeing as this market was crashing was they don't want to take that risk. They're going to take whatever loss they've got, get out, put their money in cash because they don't have another lifetime to work. If you've worked since you were 21 years old and now you're 63, well, you don't have another 42 years to work. So that flight to safety is a very big driver of the stock market. All right, how much time do I have? Okay, I've got about 10 minutes left, so here we go. There are 4 determinants of saving and consumption. There are 4 determinants of savings and consumption. The first one is what we call the wealth effect. If you have money, and I know this sounds silly, but if you have money, your consumption is going to go up. If you don't have money, your consumption is going to go down. Well, does that apply to just money? No, it doesn't. It also applies to, go back to your stock market. Let's say here you are, Mr. Stock Investor, and 4 months ago you're watching this market go up and you're like, hey, we've got all the money we want for retirement. Now they're going to start spending some of it. Their wealth in their mind has gone up, so the consumption is going to start increasing, right? Once the market crashed, not so much anymore. So now the consumption decreases. And I know it sounds very simplistic, but the more money you have or think you have, the more you're going to consume. That's why kids in college eat a lot of ramen noodles because they don't have money and they don't know when they're going to get it. So they're very cautious with their funds. The second determinant is expectations. If your expectations are high, you're going to increase your consumption and decrease your savings. And again, let's put yourself at the end of your college career. You're coming out of college or trade school or wherever you are, getting ready for your job, and you've got a job on the horizon, a job. Your expectations are high. Now you're going to go out and buy that car. Now you're going to go out and rent that nicer apartment. Now you're going to start buying some furniture, maybe on credit, but still you're going to start buying things because your expectations of income are high. Again, if your expectations of income are low, you're going to decrease your consumption and increase your savings. The beauty of this, again, today's market, which is not a great market, but you can see all this in action right now. People don't know what to expect right now, so they're just sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what's going to happen. But they're not spending money, that's for sure. The level of debt is a third determinant of how we spend our money. If your debt level is high, your consumption is going to go down. And actually, your savings are going to go down. If you owe me money, and depending on how much you owe, you have less money to spend. It doesn't belong to you. So your consumption starts to fall, your savings start to fall. If your debt level is low, and again, this could be your parents, it could be your grandparents, if they have, let's just say, paid off their house, right? 30 years, they paid off the mortgage belongs to them, they're not in debt anymore to the mortgage company. Okay, now they can start taking the vacations. Now they can start funding education. So their consumption is going to go up and their savings is going to go up. Finally, our fourth determinant is taxes. Clearly, if your tax burden is high, right, your consumption is going to go down. You have less money to spend. If the government is taxing 50% of your earnings, that means you have 50% of your earnings to spend. If the government's taxing 10% of your earnings now, you have 90% of your earnings to spend. Your consumption is going to decrease. Your savings is going to decrease. If your taxes are low, your consumption is going to increase and your savings is going to increase. So if I'm at the 50% mark here, well, I only have, and going back to our $100,000 example, I've only got $50,000 at a 50% tax rate to spend. So my consumption is going to go down and my savings. But if they change the tax rate to 10%, now I've got $40,000 more dollars. I don't even know if I can consume all that. I may be saving half of it. I may be consuming all of it, but both those numbers are going to go up. All right, so our four determinants of consumption and saving, let's just run them back through again. Wealth, how much we have or we think we have. Expectations. Am I expecting that my kids will be going to college? Do I need to start saving for that? Am I expecting that they won't be? Am I expecting the market's going to turn around? Am I expecting it won't? Am I expecting I'm going to get a job? Am I not? All that plays into how we spend our money. Our debt level. The higher your debt level, the less you have to consume. And then finally, our taxes. So all of these weigh heavy on our households. And right now, again, I think the biggest drivers you're seeing right now are the wealth and the expectations. Many people have seen their wealth disappear, or a substantial amount of their wealth has disappeared. Now, is it going to come back? Well, who knows? It might. Historically, the market does recover, but people that are right on the edge getting ready for retirement, that's going to be, hang on. That is a shock to their system, and they are going to really cut back on their consumption. And expectations, what's happening right now? We don't know. People are very cautious with their money. What's about to happen, though, is we're going to realize our country's in debt. Now, that may be a good thing, right? The recovery. We wanted things to keep going. We want to keep our jobs, even if it means our tax level is going to go up. But we're heading towards a debt level, and we're probably heading towards higher taxes. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, I've only got a couple minutes left, so I want to go through the spending multiplier one more time and just discuss how this runs. You're going to recognize as I'm doing this that it looks very similar to how banks create money. It's almost exactly the same. All right, here we go. Let's say the government has enacted a tax cut, which means what? We have more disposable income. More of our money stays with us. And we've got a marginal propensity to consume and a marginal propensity to save. And let's say it's going to average, the tax cut is going to average $1,000 to a household. Woohoo! And in looking at our financial numbers, our propensity to consume is 90% and our propensity to save is 10%. So right away, same as we did with the banks and the excess reserves and the required reserves, what is our spending multiplier? How many times will 10 go into 100? Our spending multiplier is 10. Okay, so here's person number 1. And person number 1 gets his $1,000, no taxes, right? I've got a tax cut. There's my $1,000. Well, if my propensity to consume is 90%, that means person number 1 is going to spend $900, and they're going to save $100 out of that $1,000. Now, let's just say, to keep things simple, let's say that they spend all $900 at a local business, a small business, and that goes to person number 2. So all that $900 gets spent, if you would, in one place, and person number 2 gets that $900. Well, out of that $900, they're going to save 90% of it. I'm sorry, I just said that completely backwards. They're going to consume 90% of it, so they're going to consume $810, and they're going to save $90. Okay? Person number 2 goes out and spends their money, and they spend it with person number 3. So person number 3 gets $810. So 90% of that, and is going to be, let's just leave it. $729 goes to person number 3, or gets spent by person number 3. $81 gets saved. Person number 4, we're assuming a very small market. Person number 4 gets $729. So they are going to consume $656.10, and they're going to save $72.90, and so on and so on and so on. So just like the excess reserves and the required reserve rate, same thing with our spending multiplier. The money goes through the system, So a government tax cut, hang on, that averages $1,000 a person is going to be multiplied by 10. That's how much money is going to be going through our system based off that $1,000 tax cut per person. Make sense? So the question is, let's say, let's go back to a different example. Our propensity to consume is 90%, which means our propensity to save is, well, clearly 10. Our spending multiplier, 10 goes into 100 10 times. So let's say somehow this society here receives $1 million. How is that going to affect the economy? So if we have $1 million new to spend in our economy, how's that going to affect our economy? Well, that means we're going to have, in effect, $10 million flowing through the economy. Because I spend it, the next person spends it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's use that same economy and say the marginal propensity to consume now is 50%, which means the marginal propensity to save is 50%, which means our spending multiplier, 50 will go into 100 2 times. So the same society receives that $1 million. Now it's only going to change by $2 million. All right, I think we're out of time. We'll come back here tomorrow. I'm sorry, Wednesday, not tomorrow. We're going to miss a day. And we'll pick it up from here. If you haven't turned in your tests, try to get them back to me, and y'all have a great day. Thank you.